Hi everyone, from me, Brent Graham. It's Thursday night, 9 o'clock, time for the Handicap Rugby Chat that matters. We're looking forward to tonight's show. There is no Rugby Championship rugby on this weekend, but we are going to touch on the early handicaps. I know there's been quite a lot of line movement, particularly picked up by the conductor with the opening lines early in the week. And then we'll also talk a bit of NPC. And then I've got a message from the Oracle today saying, hey, there's some long-term value he believes there in the URC and also potentially in the Gallagher Premiership. So let's welcome Oracle back straight away. Oracle, first of all, welcome back to the show. Last week, this time, of course, you were on an absolute high after that Box first test win. Very disappointing from the Box in the second test. It just wasn't the same team, was it?
How's it, conductor Brent here, and obviously everyone watching? Yes, it was. I tried to reiterate this the whole week when I got phone calls and messages from people, and obviously late Saturday night and Sunday. I never ever said the South Africans were fantastic. I was always about this is a good South African team, and they're playing a team that's on the ropes, that's in trouble, that's lost the change room, lost the coach, or whatever. But the reality is New Zealand played marginally better. I'm not going to suggest it was fantastic, and South Africa were poor. They didn't win a single turnover. There wasn't a stolen ball anywhere to be seen. I could be wrong, but I'm going to suggest that we won less than 1.5 scrums. I don't think we won anything. It was bad. But at the same time, we scored 26 points in the first game and 25 in the second, so it wasn't too much of a difference. Obviously, New Zealand winning by 12. And that's the other thing I try and explain to people is I was over South Africa winning this game by, 15, 16 or more, possibly as much as 20. And in horse racing terms, and New Zealand won by 12. So I was 28 points out on my 16 or 29 out of my 17 or quite frankly, 30 out of my 20. In horse racing terms, my horse came last. In fact, it stood in the gates. It didn't move, and maybe caught up a little bit at the 400 or 600, and then came last again while all the other horses passed him. So I know how I feel when I miss by a point or two. If South Africa had won this game by 14 or 15, I would have probably been very devastated. But because if they'd won by 15 or 16, I would have been devastated. But the fact that they lost by 12, I was a long way out. I wasn't even close. But, you and I had that sort of discussion on WhatsApp during the week, on the weekend, when I found out that, I expected New Zealand to be around even money to win this championship. And this is the most wide open I've ever seen this championship. And here they go, they 4-10. I don't know, but anyway, we'll chat about that afterwards. And it's not the Gallagher Premiership I'm going to talk about. I've always been a South African rugby punter. I haven't got involved in the French Top 14 and the NPC, the National Production of Cement, as I called it a couple of weeks ago. I'll leave that up to the conductor and Henrik to do because I'm absolutely no good at that. I have had a look at this URC, and I've had a look at the Euro Rugby Champs, so the old Heineken Cup. I'm not sure if it's called that anymore, but that's the tournament I looked at. Yeah, so I'm going to follow the South African teams, and I also suspect that when it comes to viewing, I think that particular tournament's going to get a lot more viewers on TV now that the South Africans are involved than it has before. And I do know some hardened rugby fans that watch that tournament every year, but I've not been one of them.
Right. Well, Oracle, first of all, I've got some outright betting. We will talk about that in a while on the Rugby Championship down below, but I've gone high on conductor 5.5 minutes without speaking on the show. So I want to ask you one more question, believe it or not, before I bring the conductor in. Just a point I want to make. I was talking because your show, obviously, there are a lot of guys who watch you, and I mean, when you won the week before, they were cheering up. Last week, as you say, Oracle. And what I did say about Oracle to them is I said, you must remember the week before, he hit it big. So he was hitting 5-1 winners. He was hitting 4-1 winners and that sort of stuff. Had the Springboks only just won the first test, yes, you wouldn't have been in a great position. But when you lost all of your bets, you were still losing the 5-1s and that sort of stuff. So I'm going to say this, you must have still been well up over the two tests.
Yeah, so the first test was a massive win for me. The second test, I lost, and at halftime, I took 15-10 South Africa. So I got to a point where if they'd won by between 1 and 5, I would have lost a little bit. from 6 and more, I would have won money and obviously lost. But interestingly, I took a bet on Brentford in the soccer, and I'm not a soccer punter, but they were 3-1. And I had a small bet on Brentford, or a medium bet on Brentford, because I used to be with Hollywood, and I did meet some of the Brentford Oaks, and and also the Manchester United was so rubbish the week before. I thought, this is crazy. If you remember last year, they won that first game against Arsenal 2-0. So anyway, I had a bit of a go at the 3-1. Interestingly, I didn't watch the first half because that was while the rugby was on. But when I turned on and I saw it was 4-0, I watched a little bit more, but there were no more goals in the second half. I went and lumped all that money on Argentina, which I wasn't going to have a bet on Argentina because I liked them the week before, and I think that those two games, Argentina and Australia, were very similar to the Irish first two tests, where Australia performed for those 20-odd minutes and scored 24 unanswered points at the end of the game. But Argentina put that to sleep last week. So I actually ended up getting 90% of my money back that I'd lost on South Africa. So I was quite excited about that. So it wasn't a losing weekend. It was a losing weekend, but it wasn't traumatic. And, I didn't have to cry about it or rub my head in the morning on Sunday and wonder what the hell had happened. So, yeah, I was fortunate that I'd had I was nicely sourced up. I had a few Sharpies on Saturday and got stuck into Brentford and Argentina with what was left in my betting accounts. And ended up not being in too much trouble. Then I firmly hit the withdrawal button at about 11:15 on Saturday night, and here I am with quite a lot more money than I started 2 weeks ago with. So I'm very happy.
Well, let me introduce the conductor now after one of the longest intros that I've ever heard. I'm not going to lie, I can't actually remember, conductor, the question I asked Oracle, but I'm going to do this and apologize to you for asking it because you've gone through 2 beers while you've been sitting there.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the show, mate.
It's a good thing I brought a couple of beers with me, and they're going down like a homesick mole at the moment. But yeah, thanks Brenty, and yeah, how's it, Kevin? And yeah, thanks, man. Always lucky to join you on a Thursday night and chat a bit of rugby.
Excellent. Well, we're gonna stay with you. Then we'll talk a bit about the rugby champs, and let's just talk. We'll go on to next week's guys. We don't have to spend long on these guys because obviously we are going to talk about it next week. But just to touch on what we think is going to happen, and perhaps talk a little bit about the market moves. Conductor, you spotted that I think Tab New Zealand opened this game up. Australia -4.5, -5.5, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
It opened in South Africa at 9 to 10 the pair, more or less. And it looks as though by the price of play bets here that the money's certainly coming for the box. I actually priced this, I think, on the Good for the Game forum at about box -5.5.
Yeah.
What are your views, first of all, on the movement and where are you sitting now? Which way are you leaning?
Yeah, Brenty, that +4.5 on the box, I'm like I said, I'm a bit of a pessimistic box backer. So, but I still would have been chomping at the bit to take box 4.5 at that price. At that -2.5, I'd probably take box on the board. Game being played, I just made a mistake in terms of the venue. It's being played in Adelaide, not in Sydney. I mean, if I look at the injury list, Australia still they're getting a couple back. Falafaingo's back. Hunter Paisami should be back. I think they're getting about 4 or 5 guys back that they're missing that second test in San Juan in Argentina. But it's still a massive injury list. Some very, very big players out for Australia. Obviously, a guy that's been so instrumental in Australian game plan, the hard man of Aussie rugby, Michael Hooper, he's not there. A lot revolved around him and his ability to win games and win ruck ball, etc. I think the box should be able to do the business there with the packet we have. Our front row should be better than what they've got. The physicality should be better. So I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I'd probably look at a box -2.5. Nothing big. Aussies tend to find a way to win, even with a strung together side. I see they've brought back Foley. Geez, and that's really scraping the barrel. And yeah, I mean, wow. Bernard Foley, geez. I mean, let's call back Derek Hougaard from our side if we want to really even Stevens. And obviously Kurtley Beale, etc. And they're talking about Jock Campbell going to 15. So, geez, I don't know. That Aussie side's got some big gaps. So I'll probably be looking at box minus or box on the board there.
We'll hopefully get a conditions report from Sean Nicholas, because I know he's living in Adelaide. I think he's living in Adelaide at the moment, so hopefully we'll get one from him. I've got Oracle nodding his head. Before I bring Oracle in, just a welcome to all the boys in the live chat, and good to see Guy Stone coming in there on Facebook. Guy, hopefully I'm down your part of the world and I can come to Stokers again. But Oracle, let's get your views on this game.
Stoneman, I haven't seen Stoneman since March. Yeah, I know Stokers is a great place. I know you were there with me for that one Sunday afternoon, but you'll definitely enjoy it. You should go there when the rugby's on. Stoneman won't be there though, because he'll be somewhere else. Anyway, yeah, I see Steve Reed telling us you can't back the box at any price before the starting 15's announced, and I saw the Crow Tips also making a comment. Interesting, I spoke to both of these guys last week before the game. And I'm going to suggest that they were quite surprised that I was happy to have a big bet before I knew the team. But what I've noticed with the South Africans is that this Ninaber guy seems to practice every second game. So he practiced this weekend now, and he practiced the second game in the Wales tour. So I suspect he'll have a proper go at this one. I must say, I didn't see that South Africa opened up at a plus price here. This is the first time I've seen the prices today, seeing that South Africa are favourites. In fact, I was of the opinion that they'll probably punt it down. But at the same time, I can't see the Australian punters, or anybody for that matter, Australian backers, should I say, coming in and trying to rescue this price for Australia. It's probably going to start at about -5 or -6. They were horrendous last week. Argentina put them to the sword, as the rugby journalists like to say, when a team scores 50 points against you, or nearly that. This Rugby Championship is very wide open, as I suggested. I don't know that I've ever seen, or that we've ever seen, Argentina leading the Rugby Championship after 2 games, albeit they've played 2 at home, we played 2 at home, and obviously it reverses now. New Zealand will get to have their 2 games at home, and Australia have their 2 games at home. I know that we battled in Australia before, but, as much as I said that this New Zealand team were weak, 2 weeks ago and a little bit last week, this Australian team's probably in a worse place. I did point out that after the first weekend, South Africa's price had shortened almost half. New Zealand price had doubled, and the Argentinian price had doubled. And Australia seemed to go from 5-1 to 4-1. Yes, it's a 25% reduction, but it's not like we saw in the other three teams' prices. And now suddenly they lose a game and they're 14-1. I see you've got 10-1 on there. There's definitely 14-10 around Argentina. You can probably get 50, and South Africa can get around about 4.
Yeah, I didn't take a best book. I just took the sports betting, I think.
Yeah. New Zealand at 4-10 for me offer absolutely no value. There's a lot of questions here. This Argentinian team, I see this handicap is in the 20s. I think that's way too much. In fact, the last time it was in the 20s, they won the game. This Argentina team can definitely win in New Zealand. Can they win both games? No, I don't think so. But they can certainly win one of them or get very, very close. I don't think we're going to see minuses arrive in New Zealand. I think this Argentinian team will come very close. If it wasn't for those last 20 minutes 2 weeks ago, they'd be sitting on 8 points in this championship. They went to sleep for those last 20 minutes in the first game. They were leading by 9, and there was 24 unanswered points. That's just a slip of whatever it is, concentration, all sorts of things. But the signs are there, and I don't know. It's weird because, we haven't been playing in this Super Rugby. They haven't been playing in the Super Rugby. We've been playing the Irish teams and the Welsh and the Scottish and the Italians. And the New Zealand seem to go a little bit backwards, playing just Australia and that Fijian Drua and the Samoan team that they put together, but they're not traveling anywhere. I think there were 1 or 2 games where they did travel, but they seem to be going a little bit backwards. I don't know what's happened to Argentina. I don't know where they were. I didn't follow any of the players. And you're right, Rugabugger, the accountant, has landed himself a bit of employment in Adelaide. So I'm expecting to see some, what do they call them, selfies at the side of the stadium, side of the ground. I suspect he'll be there, giving us some pitch conditions. But yes, I do like South Africa provisionally. I'm not going to take a bet yet until next week, because I'm not a very early punter. Happy to wait until Thursday, Friday next week to have a bet. But at this stage, at -2 or 3, I'm definitely a South African punter. I expected it to be worse. I expected it to be a 5, 6, 7, and then I would have had to have made a decision. But at this stage, I'm on Argentina plus and I'm on South Africa minus.
Right, Argentina on the plus. I think I'm right in saying, Conductor, you're probably leaning towards Argentina plus as well. Big handicap here, 21, 22.5, depending where you shop.
No, Brent. So I think I'm going to actually lean the other way here.
That's just Oracle tipped the plus, by the way. I just want to just clarify.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, I understand the sentiments around, what Argentina did to New Zealand, that sort of shock victory. That sort of came during the sort of lockdown era when they played in Australia. I mean, look, what they beat the Box by, what was it, 16? Was it? Sorry. Yeah, sorry, was it? What, 14, 15? This past weekend, that Box side far, far better than the Argentina side. The Argentina side really hasn't impressed me. I've watched all 3 tests I played against Scotland, 2 tests I played against Australia. The last test I played against Australia, that Aussie side was no better than a provincial side. It was missing absolutely tons of players. Really, really poor lineup. And I thought Australia butchered so many opportunities that were horrendous. They were no better than a school side. So I've watched this Argentinian side. I won't be big on the minus. My biggest play will be New Zealand overs. Argentina just doesn't have a defense. With Carreras at 10, he just doesn't defend at all. I mean, that first test against Australia, they leaked heaps of tries. Second test would have been the same if Australia could have converted. What New Zealand put 34, 35 past us this past weekend in Ellis Park. If they can put 35 past Africa, I think and I know Henrik's views on Foster, I think the fact that they've now solidified Foster, there is a little bit of they know what's going to happen now. There's no uncertainty anymore. Schmitz has come in. Ryan's come in as the forwards coach. There's a little bit more continuity, or there's a little bit more solidity rather than the coaching setup. I think they're going to be buzzing after that Bok win. So New Zealand TAB has the points line for 35.5 for New Zealand. I'll take a big strike on overs there. My only concern is Christchurch can be quite slippery. It can get a bit dewy. But like I said, I think with that reinvigorating win over the Box, I think the New Zealanders will have a new lease on life.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned a points line out there, the New Zealand TAB, and Conductor. I must say, I don't understand what stops a bookmaker bringing the points line out early, because I mean we all look at the same weather forecast. You look a week ahead. We kind of know what we're going to get in New Zealand. I mean, really, I don't understand why the bookies wait till so late. Surely a great opportunity to get out early and perhaps attract a couple of new customers.
Brent, I think we've always said it. I mean, I think the guys that do it will be probably leading the pack, just in terms of the fact that these guys come out early. If there is a bookmaker in South Africa that opens, say, early on a Monday morning, I've always said it. Say, listen, guys, open on a Monday morning, max bet $500 or whatever, on whatever the odds are. If the bookie's not going to lose tens of thousands of rands, like I said, max bet 500 per account, then the bookie has the advantage of being able to move the line quicker, because he'll know where he should have priced it. You're getting a nice early bet on. You get the punters getting action in, and like I said, I mean, for me, if I had a bookie, I would say, okay, guys, firstly, the punters are going to guide me as to where I should be pricing the game. Firstly. And secondly, if you know that one Pacific book opens early, that's the one book you can always open on a Monday morning, because they open early. So you can always check, okay, they've opened here, and then it starts getting the juices flowing. I mean, we all know on a Monday morning, the WhatsApps are flying. Geez, yeah, can you believe Australia priced this, Boxer priced this, New Zealand priced this? And then, you're talking about one specific bookie the whole time, where the rest get left in the dust. Some guys only price up Wednesday, Thursday. So, that's their prerogative. But I always felt, open up early, limit the guys to it's even a small stake, $250, $500, something. Like I said, it helps you move the line at a price of where the line should be at.
Yeah, no, 100% in agreement there. So hopefully a couple of the bookies will get on board there. Let me just check, Oracle, anything in closing before we move on to the NPC? We'll do the outrights at the end, because you said you're going to join us for the NPC tonight, eh?
I'm just reading Steve Reed's comments here. Bookmakers is a term most firms should be embarrassed using. Accountants have ruined the game. Rugger bugger, you've ruined the game, unfortunately. But yeah, so just to let you know, conductor, that you are speaking the right tone, for lack of an English word. You are right. And the problem is a lot of bookmakers don't have the time or the inclination to go and set out a guy sitting there watching weather and referee choices and all of that sort of stuff. And the problem is they get caught a lot of the time because somebody's doing their homework, faster than they are. And, I actually had this idea back in 1999 when I first started in this industry is, let's say, for example, the points start at 50. So I would say, let's open at 45 for under and 55 for over on Monday morning. And then Monday night, you go to 44 and 54, and slowly you get to 50 by whatever, Wednesday night, Thursday night, or whatever it is. But in other words, instead of limiting the 500 Rand part of it, is rather to say, well, when the number's right, you're going to have a strike. So, yeah, we've looked at, where I've been involved in the bookmaking side of it, we've always looked at different ways of doing it. But the reality is that points is I'm going to say this, and I'm not exactly accurate, but I do believe I'm reasonably close. Points often is 80% weather and 20% referee, or 15% referee and maybe 5%, something else. But it's a weather bet, and a lot of guys are getting involved in points and tries and whatever because it's raining. I remember a game in Durban where the Sharks played the Cheetahs, and I think the handicap was 7.5. We brought it down to 3.5 because I actually drove to work through what could arguably be called a river in a lot of countries, and I was going towards Durban, and I was only a couple of k's from the mourning the demise of spread betting. So am I, Steve. Don't worry, and I'm sure Brent is as well. I was driving to work that morning, and I brought the handicap in from 7 to, I think it was 3.5, and everybody took the minus 3.5 from me where I was. And the Joburg book and Cape Town bookmakers who hadn't seen the rain yet were still sitting at 7. I can't even remember what the points were, but the reality is the game ended up being, I think it was 1 point or the other way. The other team had won by 1 or 2. And I think the score was either 7-6 or 9-7 or something stupid like that. And it was all because of the rain. It had nothing to do with the particular account again. So, it's a tricky one. I'm not the bookmaker. I've worked for bookmakers and obviously worked for a bookmaker. I've been on both sides of the fence. I know exactly how you feel. I've been there myself, I know. But it is a tricky one for them, and they don't, it's just fear, I think, I suppose, more than anything else. I don't have anything else to add to these particular games, Brent. I've made my notes on the outrights here for after the show, and I'm very interested to know the price of cement from the conductor when he goes to the NPC.
Right, well, we'll have a look at the price of cement now with the conductor. And conductor, let's pop straight into the first game. Counties Manukau, if I'm pronouncing that right, minus half a point, so basically a choice game against Waikati.
Yeah, Brenty, this line has moved absolutely heaps. I think it opened at about 7.5, 6.5 to Counties. And I think just with the news, so obviously with this being a rest week, between the Rugby Championship weeks, there's been a number of All Blacks released. I think it's about 13 released back to the NPC. It was fringe or guys that didn't get a lot of time for the All Blacks back to the NPC to play for their respective provinces or clubs. So the big news in this respect for Counties, getting back Nipo Lalala back at prop, and then massive with Dalton Papali'i, I really, really rate as a great loose forward, and Hoskins Tutu both play for the Blues in Super Rugby. So between Hoskins Tutu, Dalton Papali'i, and Sean Reedy, it's a full international loose trio. Togiatama and Nepo Lalala and Ezekiel Lindemuth is a full international front row. Granted, it's Samoa, Fiji, and New Zealand, but still class. Sam Slade at 5, I really rate him. Really been impressed with Riley Hohipa at 10. And the only guys that are missing from this side that ran Hawke's Bay close is Kepu and Asu Tuala. So, really, really strong Counties side. So hence the money's come in for Counties. Like I said, coming from about 0.6, 6.5 to basically choice at the moment. Waikato just missing still a couple of guys. I see they've put Rob Cobb back at prop. But the big name that's missing on that team sheet is Luke Jacobson at 8. They had Jack Lamb last week. He's also not in the side this week. So to Rama Ruben, I don't know the guy too much. He's the 8 for Waikato. And I mean still DMAC running the show there at 10. Sullivan and Sullivan back at centres for them. It's a really, really tough call there. At choice game, I'm leaning now on Waikato. I mean, they are the Premiership champions for a reason. They always manage to find a way to squeak games. I think the value was at plus 6.5 on Counties. That wouldn't be my main bet. So in New Zealand, there's been absolutely tons and tons of rain in some parts. I see Nelson is busy experiencing flooding. There was 1 or 2 games called off because of the heavy rains. In Pukekohe, where this game's been played, the Navigation Home Stadium, it's more of a rural sort of stadium. I don't believe it's got that drainage system to really cope with a lot of rain. So I expect the pitch to be extremely waterlogged. I think it's going to be incredibly heavy underfoot, very, very messy. I think the points lines are 49.5, 50.5. Yeah. So I'd probably be leaning towards unders there. Wellington can go unders at times. I mean, they were very scrappy against Northern last week. And similarly, Counties, Manukau, big, really big boppers in that side, especially with, like I said, with Sean Reedy and Dalton Papali'i at 6 and 7. It's going to be a ferocious effort at the breakdown. So I expect a very, very messy game. So I'd probably, my better favourite there is unders. Or maybe if you want to take an alternative unders with another bet. Or alternatively, look, they're predicting quite high wind in Pukekohe. So a nice bet I always enjoy. If you are going to watch it live, I'm working from home tomorrow morning. So I will be watching live, is to see if one particular team enjoys, a very, very strong win, and then to take maybe a first half plus in that team, etc. So, like I said, I'm outlining probably my favorites would be unders there. I think with the enormity of rain there, it's going to be very, very tough.
Right, well, let's move on to Wellington minus 13.5 against Northland. I'll stick with you there, conductor, and then I'll pop. Oracle, you could just give me a signal if you want to talk on any of the games, but I've got a feeling you're waiting for the outrights. No, fair enough. Wellington minus 13.5 against Northland.
Yeah, Brenty. So Wellington's named, the Lions have named a really, really good side. Look, they obviously took a bit of a hammering against Canterbury side, but I think Canterbury are going to have a lot of sides in this NPC. They're just absolutely quality, from 1 to 15. Geez, it's super rugby quality and really, really well coached, good side. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with being hammered by Canterbury. So, yeah, I mean, Wellington, as I said, really good side. Caleb Delaney, back at 5, and I like Tane Plumtree at 6. Duplessis Karifi, and there's Peter Lakai. So it's a decent pack. Obviously, I love Asaf Amua at 2 for the Lions. And then you've got a back line of Garden Bishop and Sevilla, and also Garden Bishop at 15. So 10 and 15, both Garden Bishop. Umanga Jensen. So it's a really decent Lions side. I would have been happy on the minus. Northern hasn't released their team sheets. I only saw it on the Bunnings NPC sites, but on the NPC site they don't give the substitutes. So I saw that Tom Robinson, Big Red, he's missing from the loose forwards. Goodhue at lock, he's missing, and Kurd is also missing. But they've got Mathalai back at wing and Jack Goodhue at centre. I probably would have taken Wellington on the minus here, except for the fact that, once again, the weather there looks absolutely biblical. The game's not being played at Sky Stadium in Wellington. It's being played at Jerry Collins Stadium. It's called Pururia Park. It's about 20 kilometers north of Wellington. It's much, much, much more exposed. It's a bit more of a rural sort of a rugby pitch, etc. And like I said, it's been absolutely bucketing down in that side. So it's very, very tough. There again, I'm probably going to look at a nice unders. For me, Northland are actually possession merchants. They had a good defense last week against Waikato. It was a very, very low scoring game. I probably expect the same to happen here. So if we can get a line of about 50.5 again, I'll probably look at the unders. But considering the weather, I probably won't be touching this handicap. It's going to be very windy, very wet. In dry conditions at Sky Stadium, I would have backed Wellington to cover this. Guys like Sam Knock, I like Rivers Rohan at 10. It's a decentish Northland side that can defend like they showed against Waikato last week. I'm just not sure how tight their defense will be away. Look, they've played 2 really tough games. They won away to Taranaki and they pushed Waikato all the way last week. They may be running out of gas here. So if we can get a high line, probably take unders, but I'd probably, if anything, leaning towards a little bit on the minus. I'd still rate this Wellington side far better than Northland.
Right, the next game is Taranaki. We've got another big handicap here. Plus 16.5 against Canterbury.
Yeah, Brent, Taranaki have been so disappointing. Hey, I mean, she's losing first up to Northland. Then they got absolutely melted last week by Bay of Plenty, 46-6. Just never really looked to be in the game at all. They're just missing too many cattle. Just particularly in locks, Tupavai, Huiata, Josh Lord, Michael Bent in the props. They got back Stephen Perifetta from the All Blacks, and he was vital in their campaign last year in terms of kicker. And that, I think they've got back Daniel Rona as well in centres, and it's a new back three. Very Nicky. Take a look. I can't. Sorry.
Don't even try.
If I can see the name, I can pronounce it. I just can't remember it off the top of my tongue. But it's a new back three for Taranaki, and they're obviously looking to right the wrongs. Sorry, this Canterbury side is just next level at the moment. I mean, guys like Owen Franks and the loose trio, Christie, Cullen Grace, who's absolutely on fire. Cullen Grace not playing for All Blacks is absolutely. It's incredible. I have no idea. Absolutely. And guys like Mitch Drummond, Fergus Burke is playing well. Manessa Matayele, he's also on fire for the Cantabs. But I've got a sneaking suspicion the Cantabs will do a big rotation. They've got the Tasman next week. So I'm going to do a sneaky little Taranaki on the plus. The weather also in New Plymouth is also crap. It's been raining absolute tons. So the pitch is going to be messy. I think that the desperateness of Taranaki, Canterbury haven't released their team sheet yet, but I just think the desperateness of Taranaki may just keep them within that handicap. It's not a big punt. Look, the bookmakers have based this punt on both sides playing their best teams, but I've got a sneaking suspicion if they do rotate guys like Fergus Burke, Mitch Drummond, Christie, Franks, Brody McAllister, these sort of guys, maybe 5 or 6 key players, give the other guys a bit of a run with Iron Tasman next week. Yeah, I think Taranaki could cover that. So it may be a good preemptive strike there, but like I said, with the weather being so rubbish, it's difficult to take the minus.
Right, let's go on to the next game, North Harbour, plus 1.5 against Tasman.
Yeah, Brenty, this is another one where I couldn't believe it. Funny enough, as it opened, I misread it. So I thought it was Tasman plus 4.5, plus 5.5, and it was actually Tasman minus 4. I couldn't believe you were getting a plus 4.5 on North Harbour because Tasman are just missing too many players away to the All Blacks, too many to injuries, etc. And I mean, obviously North Harbour blew Manawatu away last week, which I don't think was the most difficult of tasks. Manawatu, third game in 8 odd days, and so I think that was always eventually going to happen. Funny enough, I've changed my mind a bit in this game. I initially was leaning North Harbour, but I'm gonna take a bit of a strike on Tasman. Yeah, I just think Tasman are just a better outfit. I watched that North Harbour side. To me, they're incredibly badly coached. They just so ill-disciplined. It was basically they were very poor against Manawatu. Actually, the scoreline didn't reflect how poor they were. It was just basically Sean Stevenson, Tavida Lee, and Mark Talia just being absolutely incredible against a really tired side. So and Tasman obviously being benefited by the return of Sebu Rees and Lester Fanga Anuku, and that was where they were really. They obviously are lacking in the pack. Really missing a guy like Anton Segner. He had a bad concussion from the first round. It would have been great. He's unfortunately not there. I think Sione Tuipulotu, I think he's there at 8. Notham back at 9. But like I said, it's the one big thing that Tasman have been missing has been strike weapons, and I think Rees, although he's playing at 15, I don't think Sever Rees has ever played at 15. I'm not sure he has, but with Fanganuku, because poor old Levi Moore at the centres having to do it by himself. He's like there's nobody there to support him. Macca Springer is not bad, but yeah, with Lester Fanganuku and Rees, there's a lot more strike power on that side. And like I said, I think that disciplined North Harbour side is shocking. So yeah, it's not a strong favourite, but I like Tasman there.
Right, let's go on to what I think is the 3 games to go. It's Auckland -7.5 against Bay of Plenty, and I don't think we've ever had Oracle so quiet on the show. This is certainly a record. Conductor, you can get your own back here on the lad. Auckland -7.5.
Yeah, Brenty. So look, Bay of Plenty. Hey, they've had 2 really good games. I think they lost narrowly to Wellington the first game. I think they lost by 2. And then they absolutely, like I said, melted Taranaki last week. Good side. They play really good footy. Some really good Super Rugby players in that side. Love to run the ball. So this one, I'd probably lean towards the minus, but I'm not going to even worry about the handicap here and wait for points. This is on Sunday morning, afternoon kickoff in Auckland. The weather would have blown over by then. It should be perfect conditions. Like I said, afternoon kickoff. Auckland can score heaps. So Auckland get back Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. So they could potentially have a backline of Rayasi, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, and Sullivan, who is absolutely deadly. I'm loving that kid, Zahn Sullivan. He's just incredible for Auckland. They love to run the ball, and Bay of Plenty have been scoring heaps and heaps of points. They scored 35 against Wellington and 46 last week, single-handedly. So if we can get a points line of about 55, 56 here in Auckland, that's going to be one of my big bets for the weekend. I'm going big on the overs here. Auckland love to run the ball, as do Bay of Plenty. This should be a lovely open game. They haven't published the referees yet, but this is where I'll be heading here. I'm not going to really focus too much on the handicap.
Right, well, let's go into the next game. Now, I know in advance I can tell people this was your best bet of the weekend, but you got Southland +7.5 because I saw you tweeted it, and I think you posted it on the forum there as well. By the way, there's a link to the forum and also the newsletter best bet. Not sure if I'll send a newsletter out. I think if you're 7.5, Southland had still been there. I probably would have made that. I'm on a bit of poor form. I went, just can't pick it right at the moment, so I may take a weekend off. But Southland +4.5, the line has moved, Conductor. You still on the Southland here? Yeah,
Brent, I'm still on the Southland, like I said, I grabbed when it came out, I've been lining this game up for a bit because obviously we had the midweek game with Otago versus Hawke's Bay. And obviously with Otago played last week Saturday, played yesterday, and I'm going to play on Sunday again. So that's 3 games in 9 days. And for both the Saturday game and the Wednesday game, they didn't really rest many. I think they rested Ainsley, Lenchies, and I think one other guy. Oh yes, Umanga, Jensen, and Centers. It's not a heap of guys that have been rested there. So so pretty much 20 out of your 23 potentially, if they name the same side, 20 out of 23 guys would have been lining up for the 3rd game in 9 days, and that's really, really physically demanding. To me, they haven't been impressive. They lost away to Counties Manukau. They did beat Tasman, fair enough, but they were very, very ordinary against Hawke's Bay in the week. and even Hawke's Bay, it was a second/third side. I thought Hawke's Bay, they unlucky not to clinch it at the end. If they just kept ball in hand, they probably could have won that game. So yeah, Otago hasn't impressed me at all. Some young guys in the engine departments at 4 and 5, and also in the loose trio. Obviously, Lenkies could be back, who gives them a bit of experience, and obviously they probably might rest Cam Miller. He's played both games, or I think he started all 3 games. So, he's played last 2 games. So I expect Josh Ioane to start at 10. I expect Umanga Jensen in the centre, and probably Sam Gilbert at 15. There again, Villamonica Royce. I think he's played the last 2 games fully. I think for 80 minutes. So, and same with Freedom Vakolo. So I think that the Otago side surely has to be tiring. They've lost Jonah Nareki to an injury again. He came back. He was a long time out, just back from injury, badly injured again. I think he's out for a couple of weeks. So, yeah, I mean, look, this Southern side isn't littered with stars, but they're very, very well coached, in my opinion. They're in Invercargill. This is a Southern derby. The fans will be massively up for it. It's going to be a huge crowd. Also afternoon kickoff. I think Otago will very, very happily take a 1 or 2 point win. So, like I said, Southern just don't go away. I've been impressed with him. And a guy like Marty Banks running the show there. Charles Alemano should probably start at 8 for them, and his brother at 15, and Loving Scott Gregory at 13 as well. What a ball player! So, yeah, I'm still on the Southern plus there, and I expect them to win this game.
Right, and then the final game is Manawatu plus 16.5 against Hawke's Bay.
Brenty, cheesy, man. The Manawatu have burnt me like a flipping. Shocking. I mean, I've just they're in the bin for me. I can't back them anymore. They were decent last year. I think they managed to make the semis of the championship, but they've just been absolutely horrendous. And I think maybe they are just missing Jamie Booth at 9 there. But they've been absolutely horrendous. So they lost by 47 first game to Canterbury. Then they lost by 27 to a B-side Auckland. Then they lost last week, I think, by about 50 to North Harbour. So they've taken absolute spankings. They've been beaten worse than a Salvation Army drum. So, yeah, I can't back them anymore on the plus day. So Hawke's Bay rested a lot of players versus Otago midweek. So I expect Lincoln McClatchy, Danny Tuwala, Isaiah Walker-Lewere to be back, Jonah Lowe to be back. This Hawke's Bay side has got far more depth. I think Manawatu are in for another pasting. I can't see them keeping within this cap.
Right, well, that's the end of the NPC. We'll get your best bets at the end, but it's time to bring Oracle back in. Oracle, you've been sitting there very patiently listening to the NPC, and now it's time to get into a bit of outrights. What do you want to start with, Oracle? Do you want to start with the United Rugby Championship or the Heineken Cup?
No, I'm actually going to go backwards, Brent. Well spoken there, conductor. I'm impressed that you only were not able to pronounce just one name. And let me tell you, I had no chance of that name. But seriously, I'm very impressed with the knowledge that you've got on the players. All right, I'm going to start with Six Nations. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a skit here of Six Nations World Cup, URC, and the Euro Rugby Champs, all 4. And let me fly through them. And I'm interested to know the conductor's opinions and obviously yours as well, Brent, at the end. But I'll go through it quite quickly. So I noticed, first of all, something that stands out for me is the Six Nations, France at 12-10, Ireland of 15-10. And then you get England at 5-1, which is, from a betting perspective, of the 100% or 112% that they're after is probably about right. But I'm going to tell you the edge lies with Ireland. Ireland are playing England and France at home. France play both Ireland and England away. And England have a home against France and they're away at Ireland. So, 15-10 for me sounds about right. And I'll be very surprised if Ireland actually don't start this tournament favourite. I think that the money is, the sentiment has gone with France because they got the Grand Slam last year. But this year it's completely the other way around. Interestingly, though, France and Ireland only played 2 games at home. So from a home and away perspective, because they're playing 5, it's 2 and 3, 2 home, 3 away for both France and Ireland. And yeah, for me, the value lies with Ireland at 15-10, especially coming after this.
I reckon, Gab, when you look at that home and away there, you've almost got to discount the Italy game, eh? I mean, if that's an away, you can almost call it 2-2 then.
Yeah, correct. I do agree with you. Ireland are away to Italy. I think France may be home to them. I don't know. I can't remember now. But
yeah. So if you're home to Italy and you've only got 2 home games, then that means you've got 3 tougher away games.
1 game, correct. Yeah, for me, Ireland are valued at 15-10. So I'm not a very early striker here, but I've doing some studies today and tonight. I'm of the opinion that Ireland at 15-10 are definitely worthwhile for the Six Nations. So it's one of those things. I know a lot of guys like to string back multiples together, and for me, Ireland, I've given a big tick on my page over here. When I look at the World Cup, and we've spoken about this loaded side. Should we just ask? Let's ask Conductor his quick opinion on that, and then we can get. We could just do it because I'm sure he's been scrambling to look at the fixtures there as we've been talking. Conductor, anything you agree? I mean, I must say, Gavin, to me, makes a good point there. Particularly if, as he says, and I haven't looked at the fixtures, if France are at home to Italy, that's 3 pretty tough away games they've got. Whereas if Ireland are away to Italy, Mark
and
said
home
that.
to France as well. Yeah. Any thoughts there, Conductor?
Where's I'm sorry, I haven't really looked at this too much. Where's the Ireland versus France game being played?
Ireland are at home for England. They got them both at home.
Yeah, then I got back Ireland there. I mean, I was really impressed with them against New Zealand, but I mean, they really look like they're putting systems to place. It's really tough to go, but I must admit it's tough to go against France at this stage. Their attack is just phenomenal. But winning away in Dublin is a difficult task. What is the odds there, Brent? Have you got the markets there? Sorry, I haven't looked at this.
England 12-10, Ireland 15-10. Sorry,
it's 2 horse race for me.
Ireland 15-10, England 5-1.
It's got to be between France and Ireland, eh? So, probably. Oh, geez, and that Ireland France game is going to be an epic game. Sure, but I'm still gonna lean France there. Actually, I just think they're just marching towards the World Cup. Sorry.
I see. Farid agrees with you there, but Gab, we can go on to the next one now. What do you want to talk about now?
Yeah, so the World Cup. I've suggested in previous shows that France at 5-2 are too short. Not to say they can't win this tournament. There's just not a lot of value about that price. And then you look at New Zealand at 3-1 or 7-2, and as I mentioned, that's probably quite big compared to what we've had in the past. But I did hear you talking about Foster. Is that guy still employed? Because if he's still employed, New Zealand got no chance in this World Cup. Where I'm going to tell you some value here with regards to bookmakers, and this is an interesting one that I've seen. They're very lazy when it comes to making a price about a team to be in the top 2 or the top 4. And they won't look at things like the draw. They will rather do a dividend or a percentage of the win price. And this is where the value comes. It's not on the South Africa, New Zealand, France, and Ireland side. It's actually on the other side. On the other side, we've got, in fact, I'm going to suggest, first of all, before I even talk about that, this is the first World Cup in a long time where the 8 quarterfinal teams are almost as obvious as they can ever be. I've looked at these groups. I've looked at all these fixtures. I cannot see anything other than France, South Africa, New Zealand, Ireland, Australia, Argentina, and Wales, England. I just can't see past that. I can't see a 9th team or a 10th team coming in and snatching one of these 8 places. So this is it's a foregone conclusion, in my opinion. And I've been one of those people that have backed the top 8 in World Cups from 20 years ago. And I've never got it right because there's always been a sneak in by somebody. But this World Cup, I can't see it happening. And when I look at the left-hand side of the draw, the top side of the draw, if you're looking at it straight on, you've got Australia and Wales and England and Argentina. And when you look at the prices, you're looking at 12-1 Australia, 50-1 Argentina. I don't even know. I think you can write your own ticket with Wales. I have no idea what price that is, probably 20-1. But the reality is one of them is going to be in the final. And, if you're getting a quarter or an eighth or a sixth or whatever the price is, there's a hell of a lot of value on the one side of the draw here about predicting the finalist. And
hold on, Gav, surely then, let me stop you there. Surely at the end of the day, so hold on, I didn't realize that. So are you telling me that, no, but surely, like if we take Ireland, South Africa, if they go through 1 and 2, they will only meet again in the final? Is that not the case? In their group, can surely the Wales and the Englands and that are going to run into an Ireland or a South Africa or France in the semis?
I don't know. I don't think so. No, it's all four of them.
I know there was one funny draw where it didn't work there, but to me the logic should be that, like, if you 1 and 2, if you meet in the first game of the tournament, for argument's sake, like New Zealand, France, or whatever, in theory that they could meet again in the final, but it may not be. But it'll be, I remember the one year I don't think it was, but to me that it should always work that way, because otherwise, if you're with let's just say there's a totally dominant team that's like 100, let's say 30 points better than anyone else, and you sort of play them in the group, then you're going to have to play them again in the semis or something. It'll be interesting to see if the guys have had a look at that. But carry on. Sorry, it just struck me as
so you are. I don't know. No, it's not like that.
Mark
because
says Brent is right. I like Mark.
Okay, well, there you go. I won't argue any further. Right, so then scrap whatever I just said for the last 5 minutes. I'm sorry to wasted your time. I'll move on to I'll have a proper look at that. That's how I understood it. I didn't realize it was the other way around. Anyway, I'll start with the Rugby Championship. Now, I mentioned earlier 4-10 or 5-10 even about New Zealand. I know Steve Reed said it was an absolute gift. I don't agree with that. I think Argentina can win this game. I certainly think Australia, even though they are in a lot of trouble, they can also win their game at home against New Zealand. I think there's a little bit of value in backing South Africa at 4-1. In fact, I was of the opinion after backing them at 18-10 and 14-10 that I might trade my way out of this. But you know what? When I saw 4-1, I'm actually going to take some more. I think it's a big price. I think South Africa can win both of these games, and New Zealand can certainly get a bit of a hurdle. And I have never backed Argentina to win the Rugby Championship, but at 50-1, leading after 2 rounds, I'm going to have a little strike at 50-1. And when I say little, it's very little. It's there may be a couple of those conductor beers. It's not much more than that, but I'm going to certainly have a little bit of a go. Anyway, let's move on. So I've looked at this URC. The first thing that strikes me is that this Leinster team is 5-10. I'm sorry. South Africa produced the 2 finalists, Stormers and Bulls, and I don't know how you can go into a tournament having not finished in the final and having 5-10 about yourself. It's just, it's not acceptable to me. There's no value whatsoever. And you look at the South African prices of the Stormers at 10-1, the Sharks with Marco Mazzotti, or whatever his name is, that dude that came from the Bluff and now lives in America, and he bought the Sharks. He's spending a lot of money. He's getting all the players. He's doing whatever he can. He wants to win these tournaments. 9-1 Sharks, 12-1 Bulls. In fact, if you collectively punt on those 3 prices, you're getting 28-10 about a South African win. Never mind the Lions at 50-1 or whatever they are. I don't even know what they are, but seriously, you're getting almost 3-1, above north of 5-2 a South African win in this URC. One thing I did say last year this time is that I would be very surprised if any of those teams won a game in South Africa. As it happens, there were 2. Connacht beat the Lions by a couple of points in Joburg in the one game, and I think
Edinburgh beat the Sharks, didn't they?
That's right. That was it. And I'm going to expect the same thing this year. These teams are going to take a long time before they get used to playing in South Africa, and that gives us a massive advantage. And yes, we didn't finish first, second, third, or whatever it was. I think our best position was third or fourth. In fact, I think it was Sharks and Bulls were third and fourth. This year, I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think South Africa will perform better in this, and I know that I've heard people talk about squad depths. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I know they're playing in the Champions Cup, and I'm going to speak about that in a second. But I honestly think that you going around about 10-1 for the 3 South African teams and probably 50-1 the Lions. I'll also back that as well. In fact, I might take a double with Argentina. Who knows? 2,500-1. It's worth a beer. But at 5-10 Leinster, I think they're still thinking, or they're looking at stats from the last 5 years rather than last year. I don't think we're going to see that. I think this tournament's going to level out properly. I'm not saying the Irish can't win, or I'm not saying Leinster can't win, but at that price, there's absolutely no value. And then we go over to the European Rugby Championship, where the South African teams are going just the 3, not the Lions. The Lions and the Chiefs are playing in the other one. I haven't found any betting about that. I'm not sure when they will come out with it, but they are playing 2 rounds in December, 1 week after another, and then they're playing again in, I think it's the end of January. What's interesting about this is it's home and away. So they play the same 2 teams.
Gav, let me give you some odds there. So you can, let me give you some odds because I see World Sports Betting have got prices. I'll call them out to you. Leinster, 1-3 favourites. No, I'm only
for
kidding.
You
are
are
1-3. No, I'm only kidding. Leinster are 2-1. Toulon are 6-1. La Rochelle 13-2, Saracen 7-1. I'll give you the South African sides then.
33-1 and 40-1.
Yeah. That's it. 40-1 Bulls. And then the Sharks are they even in it?
No, I'll tell you what the problem was. I noticed that this week. They didn't have the Sharks because some moron who's typed this out for the betting feed companies probably looked at it saying Sale Sharks, it's the same team, he put it in once. So I'm assuming that guy's been fired because I've seen a couple of sites have come out with betting for the Sharks, but that's ridiculous. I don't know how you got that one right. But anyway, collectively again, you backing to win the same amount, you're backing those 3 South African teams at 12-1. Now that's a lot of value because these teams have to come to South Africa to play. This is not a European tournament where we're going over there and playing, 3 or 4 weeks in a row of rugby in their winter. That's not happening. They're coming here. There's going to be a game in Cape Town in December. There's going to be a game in Cape Town in January. Sharks in Durban. There'll be a game in December and January. This is going to be very tough for these French and English teams to arrive over here. And what I've also noticed is the Stormers are playing Clermont. They were 7th in the French League. They're playing them home and away. And they're playing London Irish, who are the 8th in the English League. For me, Stormers top the group, walk through easily. Bulls playing Lyon, 8th in the French League, and Exeter 7th in the English League. The Bulls and the Stormers have got the best fixtures here out of everything. Sharks are playing Harlequins, 2nd in the English League, and Bordeaux 3rd in the French League. So the Sharks have got the hardest of the games here. But for me, the Stormers and the Bulls are absolute shoo-ins for the next round. And then it's one game only in this last 16, and suddenly you're in the quarterfinals. And I'm sorry, you want to give me 33-1 and 40-1 about teams that are playing at home in South Africa against teams that haven't even been here before. I'm going to take that all day, every day, including 3 times on Sunday. I mean, I think that's just ridiculous. Way too much, way too easy. There's so much value on backing South African teams in this Euro Cup and in the URC. Too much.
Bring Conductor in there, because I kind of agree with Gavin. First of all, I agree, and I see Mark Dunphy came in. He also agreed. He said, "Look, Leinster are too short. There is no value. I mean, if you're still going to get 5-10, probably even if they're topping the table with 3 games left in the season. So don't tie your money up now. I think that's agreed on there. And I also agree with Gavin. I think that the South African teams certainly do look big prices there. But just one interesting point that Mark made here, he said, the final of the Heineken Cup is at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. And that tells me one thing. If Leinster are going to target anything, it's going to be, I mean, obviously the Heineken Cup is always probably more important. But last year, I just felt Leinster got very stretched. And if anything, I'd be laying the 5-10. And potentially, look, I wouldn't even take the 2-1 now, but I can see Leinster wanting to be at home to play that final. Any thoughts around that?
Sure, Brent. Look, to be honest, I haven't compiled my thoughts too much in terms of outright winners there, but listen to what Gavin has said, and obviously is trying to think a little bit outside the box. Obviously this season stretches from now towards 2023. Am I correct? So in essence, you're running into a World Cup year, right? So you've got URC plus Champions Cup plus international plus year end. It's a lot of rugby for international guys, eh? So your box, your Irish players, French players, a lot of rugby, their workload is going to be managed. So for me, I'd rather take a team that has less internationals in it, where you're going to have a more consistent team week in, week out. Then guys, you're going to have a Bok laden or French laden or Irish international laden side. In a World Cup year, it's not going to be your run-of-the-mill horror movie where the blonde with the magnificent boobs gets stabbed in the beginning. This is a different script. You need to read it completely differently. So I don't think we're going to have the same situation. It's a World Cup year. International players are going to have their workload managed. I'd probably look at a side like the Bulls, who aren't that Bok heavy. Leinster's depth is very good. They've got a very good B team. Minus internationals, a team I won't touch with a barge poles, the Sharks. They have absolutely loaded their side with Bok players, most of whom will be on international duty or rested for a large period of time. So I think your value is going to be looking at, and I saw somebody say Munster. Munster's maybe not a bad bet either for maybe the URC. I think Stormers, Gallant was such a catalyst for their side. He's gone. Also, a lot of Boks in that side. So I'd probably look at an alternative side, so a bit of value. I wouldn't touch, like I said, I wouldn't touch the Sharks. For me, I like what Jake White does at the box. Johan Gerson will be back. I saw him at the butchery the other day. He looked fit and fighting. To fighting for a piece of biltong. He was slightly bigger and stronger than I was, so I lost out on the best pick. But he's looking good. He's back in training, so he'll be back for the Bulls. And that Bulls side is really good. Jake White's a very shrewd operator in terms of recruiting guys that have just fallen off the radar a bit, bringing them back to the Bulls. So it's difficult to look past the Bulls for me. Bulls or Leinster's would be my pick for the URC.
Okay, excellent. We're going to move on to the best bets now. In just a second, I see Mark also agreeing there that Leinster will target the Heineken Cup. We're going to go on to best bets. Just a reminder, though, if you do enjoy the show, give us a like. It does help the channel a lot. Hit the like button. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please also do subscribe. Before I bring you guys in on the best bets, let's see what the final comments were there. I see Shane saying, think outside the box. I enjoyed that one there for Gavin. And do we see Ireland win the Six Nations? You just missed, Shane. You'll have to go back on the program. Oracle did have some tips. And yes, he does like the Irish there for the Six Nations. But let's get on to the best bets. And I guess, Gav, it's a funny old weekend. You're not really into your NPC, and there's no Rugby Championship. So maybe of those long-term picks, then feel free to throw one of those in then as your best bet.
My best bet, Brent, is to take no bet this weekend. How's that?
Sound advice, I think.
Yeah, I'm getting ready for next week. These outrights and conductors are 100% right. I just put a couple of hours homework into this, and look what I came up with. I probably got a B-, but conductor's right. If you understand these players and you really understand the international fixtures, if you do a little bit of homework, I'm going to tell you, as a guy who's worked for bookmakers for 24 years, you're doing more homework than they are. It's as simple as that. Do some homework and you'll work it out. I mean, just in my little bit of homework here, I realized that Stormers and Bulls are good for this Euro Cup, or they value, but the Sharks aren't. And when I look at the URC, I'm saying all three of them possibly are. I just want to check one thing, though, and it's not to say that the conductor's right or wrong, but the World Cup is in late next year, as far as I understand. It's not in July. I understand it to be sort of September, October, maybe November. And by that point, all these tournaments should be finished. So I don't know how that really does impact the international players. But again, I've only put a couple of hours into this. If you really got the time, you can put a lot more work into it and probably get a little bit more than I have. And again, these World Cup bets, probably only looking to take late next year anyway, before the tournament starts. I find that that's often the biggest value, because they're trying to get more punters. They offer specials. They offer all sorts of things. I'm licking my lips to see what Handré Pollard being top goal scorer is because he can probably, point scorer, can probably win this thing again. Again, not to say that France can't win this thing. I just think they're a bit short. And I'm quite excited. I'm going to be going to watch London Irish and Clermont and Cape Town. It's nice to finally see French and English teams. What I did notice, though, one more thing to point out with this Euro Champions League. Conductor's 100% right. This game is in Dublin. So obviously gives the Irish teams a little bit of an edge, but it doesn't mean that backing South African teams at 40-1 and 33-1, it puts you in any danger. I don't think I've ever gone broke backing prices like that. But, here we're going to see, we won't see French teams playing French teams. We won't see English teams playing English teams. And we won't see South African teams play South African teams from what I understand, and that goes as far as the group stage. So once they get into the last 16, that may happen, but I'm not 100% sure. So it's possible that we may only see, a cross-country, an internal country playing, a team from one country playing a team from the same country may only happen in the quarterfinals. I think they're trying their best to make this thing as wide as possible. And I know that the same as the the Champions League soccer, they nominated, a team bids to have the final, of which obviously Dublin's got it this year. And I'm very interested to see when that European Rugby Championship final will happen in South Africa, because it's undoubtedly going to happen at some point. But otherwise, no bets for me this weekend. I'll only be involved next weekend.
Conductor, you got to be impressed. Oracle spoke for about 3 minutes there, and he didn't actually give us the best bet, despite the fact that I brought the bet up. I was going to say one thing, Conductor. I don't know if you guys can see it, but while I'm watching the show, I can see how many. There's like a little thing that shows me how many people are watching live. And when you mentioned blonde with big boobs, I'm not joking. The viewership jumped up about 5 in the next minute. So well played there. So, what are your best bets, Conductor?
Yeah, Brent. So just before getting in the best bets, I just in terms of what Gavin has said, look, a guy like Rassie and Inaba are so meticulous. I don't think they take a poo in the morning without a 12-point plan. So they'll know that in 2 months, it's October to October, 12 months to go. They'll know exactly per month what each player needs to play, what they don't want to play, managing workload, etc., etc., etc. So I don't think. I don't think many of the box going to play a minute that they shouldn't play. But anyway, so it's to be interesting. I think it's definitely going to have an effect on the tournaments, and that's why I probably won't be going too big in outright. But it creates a lot of opportunities into tournament, because you can maybe catch a game where somebody rests and rotates, etc. Best bets, love Southern on the plus. Going to have my antlers up on Sunday morning. Hoping the Stags do the business for me. I'm big on them. Really, really like the overs in Auckland versus BOP. Bay of Plenty. If we can get 54, 55, 56, definitely have big bets in the overs. Nice afternoon kickoff in Auckland. And then those are my two best bets. My other one that I like is probably Hawke's Bay on the minus, and not as strong though. That's my best bets.
Right, thanks, Conductor. I must say, and thanks to both of you lads on the show. I must say, if you told me that a show where we only had NPC rugby games, strictly speaking, to speak of, would be well over the hour mark, I never would have believed you. But I think, it was very interesting. I enjoyed the chat on those outright markets, because, look, I must honest, and I think it's more a sign of my economic situation these days than anything else. I don't get too involved in the long-term markets, because I just don't want to tie my money up for that long. When I remember the 2011 World Cup, I was backing France from years out. But I don't do that anymore. But always very interesting to have a look and look at the different angle. And first of all, thanks to all the boys in the live chat. As usual, great to have you on there. And to my guest tonight, Oracle, good to have you on, mate. I think you've got a lot of time on your hands, all this research you're doing, and I know you're going to come up with some more winners in the coming weeks.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Great shot. Very good. Sure.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me.
Oracle there for a sec. Sorry, mate. And then, Conductor, thanks a lot, man. Have a top weekend.
Thanks, Brenty, and to you too, and to Gavin, and enjoy it. So I see there was a comment regarding the SA women's team. I don't know if we'll get odds again. That was a cracking bet. I just was running around again to the butchery on Saturday morning. I forgot to study the flipping teams like an absolute novice. And I didn't see that the Spanish coach had basically brought an entirely new side over. The SA girls are actually pumped for that game. Whoever got, I think Farid, you said he got on the outright, absolute cracking bet. It was SA girls plus 7.5, great value. I'd love to see what it is this weekend. I mean, they beat with the Spanish side 44-7 or something. I think they're playing tomorrow at the Donny Craven in Stellenbosch. So it'll be interesting to see if we're getting odds for that. But yeah, whoever jumped on the SA Women's last week, well done. I don't know if we'll get the same odds next week. This or tomorrow, so rather.
Yeah, I saw Southpaw was, I think he took them over 17.5 points and it arrived in about the 24th minute or something like that. Gab, something else to finish us off?
Oh, so I was chuckling at what he's just said now. I saw that game on the TV. I knew they were playing before, but I honestly didn't even think about looking for betting. But what I did realize is they've never beaten them before. And you have to ask them, I'm not going to suggest match fixing, or even organized results, but you certainly start to think a little bit when a team has never won a game before and suddenly they win by 40 points. I didn't even know there was a bet available, and I probably wouldn't have had a bet, but I'm now interested in this Donny Craven match because it's probably just going to go the same way. But yeah, all right.
And let's face it, guys, that's also, I mean, the women's sport that is coming up, and I mean, it really, I mean, I do enjoy a lot of it, but that is ultimately where Gavin talked about homework earlier. But that's where a bit of homework can really pay dividends because, like you say, Conduct, I mean, if you showed me that Spanish team today and there were 15 changes, I wouldn't know it, and neither would the bookies. So if you can get on top of that, I think women's sport could be where the value is, and perhaps we've got to start covering that in a separate show.
Well, it's massive value, Prenty. Like the Women's World Cup is coming in October, and honestly, I cannot wait. I love women's rugby. It's and the reason I look, there's some great. I enjoy the Women's Six Nations immensely. That French side I love that French side. The English side is potent. The New Zealand side have just got some good coaches in. I think some ex-All Black head coaches are now coaching the women's side. They've got some sevens players coming in for them as well. But what I like about women's rugby, and it was specifically evident in that Bok game versus the Spanish game, where some of the girls were younger for the Spanish. Physicality is so much more important in the women's game, where you're not necessarily being able to bring down the bigger physicality or bigger statue. Physicality is so much more important. One pack can definitely dominate another pack. The French pack is incredible. The English pack is phenomenal. So you can definitely get some very lopsided results. And like you say, if you do your homework, put the schoolwork in, put the beers away, do some work, you can really make some good money. It's just a pity that the bookies don't embrace it and they try and limit punters who are able to do a bit of homework. Yeah.
We're going back to the Oracle. I see he's put his hand up there. Just first of all, before I go to Oracle, though, where's the World Cup taking place, Conductor?
In New Zealand.
In New Zealand, okay. And Oracle, you said
you
wanted to add something there?
Mark Dunphy's come on here saying Ireland women team didn't even qualify. But, you just made me laugh, Conductor, and you're right. I mean, there's a lot of value in this women's rugby if you can find it. But one thing I said to my kid many, many years ago, I said, you can marry anyone, no? I don't care. Boy, girl, whatever it is, whatever, anything. You can marry anyone you like. But if you come home with a woman rugby player or a woman MMA, you're output because you've got no chance. Some of those girls are just not attractive, mate. My gosh, they're just machines. Yes, you're right. There's a lot of value in doing some homework on that. I just haven't done it. But yeah, I will watch this tournament coming up. But yeah, I think there were, in fact, in the betting, I think there were only 2 teams in the betting. It was England and New Zealand, I think, and the rest were like 10-1 shots. So, yeah, it's almost a 2-horse race.
Yeah, it's a 2-horse race, 10-1 the field. But I think when Oracle starts talking about unattractive women, it's time to end the show, gents. Thanks very much. We'll chat next week for the Handicap Rugby Championship. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Go well.